My name is Dagda, and I'm joined by Vedius as we bring you into episode 4 of EUphoria. We'll be going through all things with Fnatic, and we are available on Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube.
And as Dagda said, we're joined by Fnatic's MikyX and Grabbz to discuss their struggles, a bit of fearless draft, and finding out who is Babyx.
All right, well, Mickey, Grabbz, thank you very much for joining us on this episode. So, first things first, I think we gotta deal with the elephant in the room.
We don't have to.
Because look, things were looking so good for you guys. Like, you came out of the season, we were like, oh my God, this team looks fantastic. This is the strongest Fnatic have looked in forever. And it seemed to be going well. But kind of what happened then against G2? What was the parts that made it crumble?
What did happen, Grabbz?
What did happen? No, against G2 had like a 5k gold lead.
I rewatched that game today. Yeah, it was
to
actually you. I was confused because you had a lead and then you lost a fight, and then you had a lead again and then you lost another fight, but then you got Baron, and I was like, oh well, now the game should be over, and then you still lost the game.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't help that our ID carry was like really out of it.
I did hear Upset was quite
yeah, like on the day still there was a chance that Gax has to play for him. We didn't actually know. So he was a trooper, but of course, he's a very vocal part of the team. So if he's feeling a bit off.
I see.
But also, when we're saying in comments, we do Drake Atakan. Okay, sure. And then you just see Corki after Drake walk away. We're like, Elias, can you hit? Oh, I thought it's free. And then I see it. Okay.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, yeah.
Yeah, I think from both teams, especially game one, it wasn't the greatest showing. I think G2 can also make the claim they didn't play well, right?
Yep.
But I feel like we try to be too cute or adding too many little things that we don't have to. Even against BDS, for example, your death in the first game, where it's we already have the space, we want to have more space even, then we make a mistake and die. And I think we just should stick to the basics a bit. But BDS yesterday was a completely different story. Against G2, honestly, it feels so far away, actually.
Yeah, a little bit for sure. But I also think why we looked that much better in regular split was probably because everyone else was so bad. But now people kind of started drafting normal, and the games were not as free because a lot of our games in regular split were just one in draft, except the first one, of course. But it just felt very easy because people just gave us everything. A lot of times we just got Mbessa, Vi, Kaisa, or I don't know, we had full out range against someone else as well. And I guess the overall level of the teams was lower as well.
Yeah.
I still think it's not the greatest, but at least it's getting better. I think KC and G2 showed some good games, I think. And Koi, I guess, in the end.
So last year, we spoke to Razork on the podcast, and he basically talked to us. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but his summary was that sometimes they just lose focus, right? Sometimes they get they sometimes they can't, and you were there when they had an 8k gold lead against you. So I am curious how much of that still remains, because the bot lane is now completely different, but you've come in too. So how much
let's just say I was also surprised by how aloof they can be. We even had talks today, and some players were like, yeah, I went to the game one and I just didn't really know what happened. I just said I was out of it. Okay, cool. That's great. It was the first actual best of we had with this team, because the first week was 2-0-0-2, right?
Yeah.
And I think I was just a bit surprised by the mentality that they displayed. Because of course, with the history that this team has, at some parts for me it felt like they were more afraid of losing than excited of winning. Which is something, of course, we can be honest about game 3, for example, against BDS. It was dead silent until they threw. We're oh, we can actually win.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk again. And it's just something that, of course, if you get beaten down by G2 over that many years, it can impact you. I was just surprised by how quickly it can happen, right?
Is that where you rely on players like Mickey and Upset, the newer guys, to come in and kind of be the voice that you need on that? To kind of drag people out of the post.
Mickey is more of the mood amplifier. He doesn't change the mood.
Yeah.
So if someone is a bad mood, he runs it down and it's I'm also angry. And if someone's a good mood, he jokes around.
Yeah.
And Upset is a big part of carrying that as well. But also he had an off day yesterday as well. Especially in game 3.
What are your kind of steps then for that? Say you do have a player that is sick. Like, do you try and change the draft to try and help them out? Is there like a set game plan you try and go for because you're like, hey, this is where upset feels most comfortable in this sort of scenario? Or how do you try and answer for that as a coach?
I mean, of course, comfort is really important. Also, our players, I think, rely a bit more on, and Mickey alluded to it, knowing the draft, which of course in Fearless is a bit harder. Yesterday there was a bit of a miscommunication between Grabbz and you guys. Nothing
Game
one,
not
yeah.
Fearless yet.
That's what I'm saying. Like, let's just say that Grabbz had the really clear prepared the Zyra there, and the team was like, yeah, we talked about it. No, we didn't. Like, we have the Google Sheets. It is there, but maybe that Grabbz for the presentation was a bit far to the right. So the first left parts weren't there. So yeah, just give them comfort. Ultimately, again, for me, it was a learning experience because, as Mickey said, the first games were really easy. And we kind of talked about it and we said we're not that good yet. But of course, I think I was also very human. If you win 10 games in a row pretty easily, that the first time a barrier appears in G2, that's suddenly you're taken aback, right? So I think, again, G2, the 2-0 loss didn't surprise me at all, or like didn't affect me.
Yeah.
Yesterday is a different story. I think I'm really not sure what happened yesterday. Also, the mentality felt off the entire day. People seemed a bit like, not aloof. Aloof is like a thing of like, oh, I don't really care, but it's more like a ship swimming in like uneasy waters, basically. That's how it felt. Like very wobbly, everything.
That's really interesting.
Oh, sorry. I think it was like, I feel like I was experiencing this similar thing when we played against NRG at Worlds, where it was like in scrims, they could not win a game.
Maybe, yeah.
So we were like playing on stage, and then when you try to go for like everything, even if it doesn't make much sense, because you assume you would get away with anything you do in the game. And then when they actually start punishing you and they start winning fights and they start like making catches, then you're like, wait, we're actually losing to this guy. And then I feel like the mood always gets like, really down when you start losing to these type of teams that you always win in practice. So yeah, it kind of felt like similar.
Probably, yeah.
But I guess Energy was a bit stronger mentally. So they kind of like stumped us pretty cleanly. But BDS had some struggles there to close out.
Yeah, it's fascinating because like I heard this from BLG as well, and I think it was in a Bin interview where he said against TT that like they didn't even know who they were playing until they, like that's how little they cared about them, and then they lost.
That's crazy.
And then I mean, they then went through the playoffs and they're fine now, right? They bounced back, but it does surprise me that this happens. Like, why is there a lack of discipline, Mickey?
Wait, as a coach, because
Why is that?
I am the first to like criticize discipline, but I think it's also very human because we're actually against BDS approaching like 90% win rate in scrims.
I see.
Like, they actually cannot win games against us most of the time. And it wasn't like open disrespect. We still talked about what they want to pick, what they can pick.
Yeah.
But I think it's just what Mickey said, right? In the small moments, you reach for more than you should.
I see.
You don't respect as much as you should. And then, I mean, they played well as well, especially 1-on-3. Someone who, like, we think a bit of coin flippy, but he really flipped the right coin yesterday. He was Prime Canyon immediately.
Because that's the thing. Like, when I looked at the draft, it was like you kind of gave him two of the picks. It was the Skarner was the big one, and then you also gave the Nidalee, which has been permabanned against them. Was it like, hey, we are willing to take these risks because we've played so much against 1-1-3, we've seen it in scrims, we're not worried about it? Or was it just he surprised you how well he played on the day?
I mean, we knew the Elise is coming, and we just felt that with our first three, we have a good answer to it. We just, I think, played badly. And again, the same thing happened there where, I mean, BDS looked better in almost every game. I mean, game 1, we were 3K ahead. We threw as well. Like, we threw first, by the way, just saying. And then game 2, I think by the time they got Atakan, because I think we really heavily misplayed the entire segment where Yona can move and we don't take vision back, and then we're playing with a vision for 4 minutes. But I think Yona was up 2 levels at that point. I think also Rumble was really far ahead. Like, the side laners were not playing. Right? BDS is overplaying as 5, which also in scrims we punish usually. But yesterday there was no endpoint. We're like, okay, they're bleeding on sides. And then, especially Mickey as Galio with Sejuani, they're reliant on the team, right? On the side laners. But there was no actual point of, okay, we do this and then we fight. There's more, I'm getting ahead. We're like, cool.
Yeah,
There's the game plan to it, right? And
I'll just put some words in base.
Yeah.
And put some words in base.
And that's why what we mean with like yesterday felt wobbly, because normally it's okay, we do this until a second item and we go. And then you have at least a game plan, right? We stall 5 minutes and go. Yesterday was a bit more, we're getting ahead.
They're not the con. Oh shit! I guess I was bitching. We're dead.
Yeah, pretty much that's what it felt like. And,
I see.
that's why it's really hard to put a finger on, because again, it was the first actual best of series we had together. So some like big learnings we took. Some stuff as well you can approach differently mentality wise as a coach in that regard.
Yeah.
So I guess I saw the really good sides of certain players and also the depths of hell against G2 yesterday.
Yeah.
But it's nothing. I don't think it's nothing that worries me for the next week, because it's something you can just talk about openly. We had a good debrief, I think, yesterday, 1 hour of discussions about how we approach things. And
because like I saw some comments which like you won a series where you went 0-3, you know, like, and you know, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, like, if I go on the broadcast next week, I'm naturally going to be skeptical about your position against Koi, because Koi did exactly what everyone expected you guys to do, which was they just kind of stomped. They made fun of their opponents. Like GX, I feel like didn't play the game, whereas it felt like that we saw a lot of weakness. So I guess the question would be, how do you make Fnatic fans believe that the problems that happen this week aren't going to happen next week?
Well, I think it's because Vedius versus Fnatic was actually the final. Vedius is actually the second best team ever. So that's why it was so close.
All right, that's fair.
the Crisis Scrims Fatality was the third best.
That's right. Mickey, we said to make them believe.
You can believe now.
I also think though, like, this belief is a big of the issue as well in the team, because we started the year saying, like, of course G2 has been seen as they have to scale as well, of Labrov and Schemon coming in. But we made it clear that we don't have winter as the clear goal. Like, we would much rather be a good team by the end of summer.
Right.
And what happens, right? And then, as Mickey said, we got like every game gifted in draft, basically. Had really clean games. And we tried to like still say we have to improve, this is what we're doing wrong in scrims. But of course, if you read comments, if you see Twitter, if you see what other players talk about you, to a certain degree, you believe the hype as a player, I think.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And then, as Mickey said, right, the same thing that applies against BDS, you start losing, like, wait, what? The same thing applies against Reborn game 2, for example, like, wait, we're not stomping them, what's going on? And then you start second guessing the things that actually got you to that position in the first place. So I think we just need to stop trying to win in special ways and just actually play the normal game. Because my players still have the hands normally. Yesterday not so much. I have to believe that I have. So
I'll bring spares for next time.
Thank you. It is sorely needed. So yeah, it's not about making them believe that, again, we want to win winter, of course.
Yeah.
But I much rather lose winter and be a good team in summer than win now, take wrong learnings, and then be fourth in summer. Like, what's the point, right? Ideally, you want to win everything. But of course, like, other teams have the same feeling. So we should just focus on our work, do it correctly, and then if we do good work, we win. And I think that's the thought process we should have again.
So does that then kind of start with comfort then in the drafting? Because you're coming into Fearless, which it feels like is a little bit more difficult to try and get that comfort. So if you're talking about being the best team, do you find that you have to now practice several more different styles of composition, and you can kind of find that it's a struggle to get as much practice as you'd like onto certain weak points or certain things that you're not able to play with? Or is it still just, hey, we're kind of figuring out as we're going along?
We have a bit of a different mindset from coaching staff to players, I think. And like, game 1, I agree with you, right? Yeah. There's no question that sometimes it feels a bit, especially in scrims, about like game 4, the draft wasn't ideal and players be like, I couldn't play. And then I look at the game, like, that doesn't mean you have to die 30 times in 50 minutes, right? Like, try to play the game. So yeah, I think ultimately, and this is something that we need to focus on as well, players should be able to say in game 3, this is what I want to play. Like, there in game 3, 4, 5, look at LPR as a K, there are no comms as much anymore. Sometimes you see a weird pick, a pocket pick, and just, I want to play the champion, I think I can win on the champ myself, basically. And yesterday for us, especially if I were like, yeah, I can take it, it's fine. Funny enough, I said this now, but Mickey was the only one in 4-5 saying, pick me Elise, I 1v9 here. And they're like, Leona's better. And then pick Rom, and like,
Because that was going to be my question. I'm on his friends list. I see what he plays in solo queue. Like, how often do you have to just go, no, we're not bringing out this random pick that worked that one time back 3 months ago?
I mean, you're talking to the guy who'd have to Pike Midland in Worlds Finals. So I think pocket pits are fine. At least.
Yeah. I mean,
I empower you, come on, be honest.
It's true. But yeah, I like to pick something that makes sense for the comp, I guess. So in that game, I felt like we kind of need like a Leona in our team.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, That one makes sense.
When you went against it, yeah,
so
for sure.
this is because we've been having a lot of discussions internally about the Fearless. So my first question, really easy one: do you actually like Fearless? Yes or no?
I like it, yeah. Mostly because every game is like a bit different than the last one, and I like to play a lot of different champions.
Yeah.
So I have the possibility to do it. In scrims, I had some very fun games of some very fun champions
Funness, yeah.
that I'm still undefeated on, in case you're wondering.
Yeah. We might play it next weekend.
Yeah. So, yeah, for me, it's very fun.
Yeah, because as a viewer, like today's series, I had a lot of fun watching. Like, but one of the things that I mean, credit to Tryndamere, one of the things that he believes is that right now teams aren't necessarily very good at building around a thing that they believe can win them the game. And Odo expanded a little bit more on this by saying that a lot of the pro mentality for many years is you have a list of champs that you guys define as OP, right? Like game winning. Really easy example is like Bayern Bessa. Right now in EU, people clamor over getting those picks. And when it was traditional draft, they would either be picked or banned every game. And normally you guys had to make a choice between, are we getting rid of this or do we have a maybe answer for it? But now, the moment it's played, that's gone. And so when you start moving down the tier lists of champs, it then starts to be this amalgamation of some champs that you think are strong still with what's left versus champs that just kind of like fit sort of, rather than necessarily going, okay, I believe that if I get, let's say, a Nivea, we need to build a comp around the Nivea that makes sense, that can like either the Nivea can complement something else or something best supports the Nivea. And I was just curious on your guys' perception. Like, do you think there needs to be a shift in perspective around Fearless? Or do you think it's just a practice and learning and expanding thing?
In my opinion, because every game is so different, it's just a skill to find out in the game how you win that game from that draft. I give a different example, which is also yesterday again happened. We had Azir. And normally Azir is the champion that as soon as there's National 2, go side lane, almost nothing can land against you.
Yeah.
And we picked Azir first because we think the champ is really strong, like the entire region. But then we decide to almost lose the game before he gets even the first item. And I think even the first if you take, MikyX is saying, I have the item in 200 gold or something, and we still fight.
Right.
So in that regard, we can talk about building comps as much as we want, but also it's important to realize in-game what the actual steps are to win the game.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't matter if you play a Nivea or a standard comp, because you can also say, okay, let's just slam Galio Wukong, go team fight. But if you still go into the game and you fight over your ults, for example, you're still gonna lose. So I think it's like hard to find a black and white answer. The same way, I mean, as a player as well, if certain players, if they have a good matchup, they want to take over, right? And then you play at snowballing, which of course you can argue maybe scaling is better. But I think it's really hard to find like a definite answer for that.
I mean, I think just like in general, you should always try to draft around your strong OP pick. Like, I don't think in Fearless you should like draft to like build like a comp specifically, but you just have to have champions that work well with the champ you're picking early, like first pick, or like what champ you consider OP. Because if you have a champ that like wants to dive in, let's say Ambessa, and then have like 3 other champs that like want to peel back, let's say you have Kog'Maw Braum or something, or like and they play like, for example, today they played Seraphine Viego, like KC, not very strong, I would say. Like there's not really any connection there, I would say. So I think just probably the best is to actually make a comp around your early picks, so everything makes sense together. But
also then to think further, right? Like the more you go into one theme, especially at blue side, the harder the punishment can become.
Yeah.
In a fair pick, right? What game was it? Well, was it in scrims maybe even? Like one team picked Olaf. It wasn't in scrims. It was in SK, I think.
Yeah.
There was like one Olaf game where like Olaf completely dominates. And it's like, I think game 4 Fearless, your 4 champs make sense together, and you're like, oh, they have an Olaf. We can't play.
Yeah. So 4-5 is very important.
So you're saying that like on blue side, it's almost more difficult to draft because you don't want to over-index into it. But we basically see every team opting in towards blue side. Is this just because you want that power pick? Is like the counter pick or the counter comp not valuable enough in the draft?
It is more the value of knowing exactly what you're getting. Because, as Odo said, right, teams have their own tier lists, let's say, but they're subjective.
Yeah,
so if you go red side, like you don't know, first of all, if you're getting what you want the most, because they might pick it away.
Yeah.
And also, they will get for sure something they really, really like. So it just feels also very awkward. So unless you have a player or like a strategy to have something on 5, which is really good, or a pick on 3 that you can ban 2 for, then Blue's just better, more stable, let's say, because at least you know one pick that's gonna be in the draft for sure. Because for example, yesterday they had to ban Kalista on both sides and Vi, so we knew there can only be 2 scenarios because they have only 1 more ban.
Yeah,
easy to prep, right? Where they have to think, okay, they have 3 bans they can use. There can be like 6 scenarios, and you don't have the time to prepare for them.
Yeah, I thought it was super interesting today, actually, that Kalista was pretty much, it was banned on blue by KC, and then on game 2, they then, I think they chose to ban it again, but then in game 3, they were just like, we're gonna ban Draven, because now you have to ban the Kalista, because either we're gonna take it, and then in game 4, they picked the Draven themselves, even though Kalista was open. And so I do think it's pretty interesting how, like, the more the bans fall through, that your ban approach specifically just adapts, because it, like we talked about Poppy too. The moment Poppy's gone in game 1, so many champs suddenly become a lot more comfortable to just blind, right? Because that counter isn't available anymore. So it's super fascinating to watch, and I imagine it's super complicated to have to navigate your way through.
It's also something that like you can easily forget is how hard it can become to drop your pick to 4 or 5, because all you need is like them picking that champ early, having 1 ban in the first 3, and then 2 more, and suddenly you have 5 champs deep.
Yes.
Even though you thought you have like 6 champs to play, and suddenly there's nothing left.
Yeah.
And I think this is something you just need experience with and to be more prepared for, basically, right? And I think also yesterday, I mean, I don't think that Jin Leon was great into Braum, right? It showed that game 3 draft on bot side was really hard. And I think we got caught off guard a bit there.
I would say, yeah.
Some might say. There are rumors about that. And it's also so different from the way people contest picks and scrims on stage. It's always complete 180. So it's a new learning experience every single time.
Cool. It's really cool.
And do you find yourself like getting caught off guard more often now in scrim drafts or even on stage drafts where like, oh crap, I didn't even realize that this champ was available?
Were you expecting Vex top?
No. Or
I mean, there is a secret tag called OPGG. Yeah, and I think if you actually click on Mervin, then you see like 8 games of Vex top lane. So that one I think was expected. The Garen we knew, like he didn't play it in last week in solo queue, but I saw like he had 14 games of it, never played it on stage before. So we were quite happy in the game 1, for example, like when he picked the champ for the first time. Like, good luck to him, right? Maybe he has a secret account where he played 50 games, but it's a big difference. So in that regard, I don't think we got caught off guard so far yet.
No,
really.
but like it's still a lot more variable, so sometimes you might forget what is actually open or what is actually banned. Like sometimes in 4 or 5 you're like, oh wait, I still have this champion. It's like, wait, we played the last game, I don't actually have one more pick, you know. Or like it was played in like a different role, but it was your champ. Like let's say someone plays like Maokai support, then you can't play jungle. Like, oh shit. Sometimes I get caught off guard from that.
And then, like, without trying to give too much away, do you think there is actually value to like, hey, we're going to let Poppy through game 1 and then we can open up support picks way more? Or is it just kind of like a, hey, we're playing each draft as it comes rather than looking at the draft ecosystem as a whole?
I think it makes more sense to do 1 draft at a time and then just adapt for the next games. Like I think a lot of people are like theory crafting, oh, if you pick 580 carries in game 1 and then game 2 then carries.
I guess there's that line that you were talking about, which is the because you're saying that sometimes you feel Fnatic's overcomplicating things when you could just kind of rely on your fundamentals and like rely on the hands, assuming it's the right day, of course. But I guess that's kind of the same thing in draft, where there's probably a line somewhere where a degree of cooking can give you an advantage along the lines in a best of 5. But at the same time, if you go too deep, you're probably just shooting yourself in the foot, because if you do end up with 580 carries, then what is your win condition, right?
Yeah.
I think it is cool, though, that you can kind of go into a draft and say, like, what you guys did against BDS, which is we're going to leave Skarner open. We think we have an answer first.
I like that.
And then if it messes up, it's like, well, he's gone anyway. I think it's got to be a bit of a relief where you're like, hey, we can actually attempt this thing. And if it doesn't work, well, look, it's 1 game gone, but we still got the rest of the series to play with.
Yeah, it also goes both ways, right? If then the pick in the Fetus is open, you're like, okay, they must have a plan. Because there's no way they give us this champion only 1 time open in the entire series without having a clear plan what to do.
Yeah.
So that way is also like, okay, do we actually take the bait? How prepared are we for it? Because, for example, Skarner's always a thing. Probably no team actually plays it a lot because in scrims, usually it's permanent.
Yeah.
So, of course, the champ is monster strong, but then the question is just, okay, can we execute it in champ, yes or no? I mean, yesterday, sure, we can say coaching staff did a poor job of talking about that segment or like that specific scenario. But we still felt confident in the champs we had, and it still made sense. Of course, then, I mean, I got permission by Ivan for saying this, but of course, if the Skarner East and Marzara doesn't hit their Oni, or like in a span of 6 minutes, he face checks her twice, then we're gonna lose.
I mean, the thing was, he just like went into the bush in the river. But like, I think he said also he had W up, but he just like went into the bush and then, oh shit, Skarner's here. Yeah. So he was like, oh, I'm spending so much time here. I don't know, where's Skarner? I guess it's here.
The crazy part is he did it twice in 6 minutes because the first time he loses flash and the second time he dies. So like, okay, cool. Then it doesn't matter what you're playing, right? And like,
yeah. The hands kind of matter to a degree.
I mean, the brain as well and the brain.
You're definitely right on that. Yeah.
A little bit important one now.
Do you find yourself then entertaining discussions of like, no, this is actually a good idea, your hands are just bad? Or is it just like, hey, no, this isn't something that we're going to entertain anymore? And you're just taking that champion or that pick or that play off the board?
It really depends on the player. Every player is very different.
Well, you can flame Mickey about this if you want.
I have to think about how a word is on broadcast because I would use different words off air.
I mean, you can talk about past players if that's helpful too, because
not just every. Every player is a different flower and very interesting in their own regard. And there are certain pitfalls of certain players, and even though I disagree with them logically, I just know if I say it this way to the player, the day is over.
Yeah. But you like to put fertilizer on all of them. We understand.
But it's also the coach quote when the draft is something really completely shit, and I was like, guys, you guys died so many times. Draft's completely playable. You just have to play it better. That's like coach cope.
Coach.
Yeah, it's just hard for me to believe that Mickey is saying this to me.
That's true.
Averaging like 8 deaths to scream or something. Okay.
Like if I'm playing like Yuumi and sitting on my ally, then it's probably harder for me to die. So if you don't want me to die, then you can pick me Yuumi and I'll sit on someone else.
But in that regard, no, I think this is kind of difficult as well because you have to talk to the entire group while also catering to everyone individually. Like we can talk about Loki. Like 2 weeks ago, we both had a falling out, like a pretty heavy one, and it just basically was a misunderstanding. Because I know I actually goes to the gym. I must be careful. No, basically it was more like I know how he works. We worked in G2 for a long time together, right? Yeah. So I know that he wants like humor, coping a bit if it goes badly. But our gameplay was really unfocused. So after the game, because I know like I am as a person, I'm very negative and like very German in how I look. And I showed it and I said, okay, rather not speak, let's just like you guys think what's best for the last game to not ruin the mood. And he felt attacked because he felt that...
Yeah, I was having fun. I was stomping my opponents. Yeah. I was like, this game was so much fun.
So in his set, I was attacking him having fun. But I was just unhappy with
I was like, I guess I just want to have fun then.
Yeah, exactly. So we're both like, I guess also like a night block. So it's like 10 p.m. already. We played like 8 games. We didn't do the best job in that moment. I think both. But then, of course, we can talk about it. But that's the thing, right? Like, I did it consciously, the way I talked. It worked for some people, not for him.
Yeah.
And that's the thing addressing the entire group. And ultimately, it's still, we are together for what, 2.5 months now? And still, I'm surprised by certain reactions from certain players sometimes. And okay, I guess this is something I have to know now.
Well, communication is... it's funny how much I empathize, but for completely different reasons. But it's... I totally understand how communication is so important. And recently, like over the last few years, I've had to learn a lot of skills about how, like, I'm a very direct person, right? And a lot of people are very open. And so if Rob says, like, how do you think the cast was? I'll tell him how I think the cast was. You know,
and you don't have to ask sometimes.
Yeah.
You're feeling great.
And so, like, one of the skills I had to learn was just like, hey, Rob, are you open to feedback? And then he sits there and tells me, actually, I'm not. And I'm like, cool. All right, then.
But the problem is now you're in your head because he wouldn't have asked, are you open to feedback, unless he hated the cast. So it doesn't matter. You know you're in trouble anyway.
But I'm trying, okay?
I get that for sure.
But it's, I really empathize with the idea that, like, one communication style does not fit all. And even if, like, I'm a big believer in honesty is the best policy because you can just get it all out there, that you can just, you know, have a good conversation about it. But not everyone's good at managing just having all the honesty out there. And it's totally understandable why that can be complicated. And I empathize with coaches because I imagine that not only do you do a lot of work behind the scenes, but like every interaction with a pro can have some effect on the relationship as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is something that I think also like Miffy recently mentioned in a podcast he had with Dom and Yamato said, even as an assistant coach, you can be way more direct to players because you're like not the head coach. So it's basically for coaches, is like, or like even better if you're a player. Mickey can say to like, Eva, you're playing a dog shit and you're both players and it's fine. And even if Mickey is wrong, it's like, okay, whatever. But as a head coach, you have to be like, first of all, really sure that what you're saying is true. And also, okay, I can't burn the bridge with my player, right? Basically. So it's very dynamic again from person to person. Let's be honest, you're talking to players as well. Not everyone is developed completely socially. So sometimes I got off my way and okay, I can feel it. You don't like it. What happened? How can I help you? I don't know. Like, conversation, right? It's both ways.
Of
Like,
course.
okay, how can I get it off you? I don't know. Cool then let's go tomorrow and see how tomorrow goes. And I think that's one of the most frustrating parts.
100%.
And I mean, that's why, I mean, as much as this guy also annoys me sometimes, but at least I know how he ticks, right? So I don't have to talk with him as much. I just know how he feels. With 4 new players, it's a bit different, of course, right? And they're very different. We did like a... That's fine.
That's fine.
I don't want to burn the bridge, so I'm not going to talk about it.
And how's your experience with communication, Mickey? How have you grown and changed over the years?
Well, I guess nowadays I do say what's on my mind a bit more than I used to. Usually I would just like keep it to myself. And then if it would build up, then I would, sometimes have way worse mood. I think nowadays I kind of say it if I'm feeling brave in the moment. It doesn't happen very often. But usually when something repeatedly happens, then I kind of like usually I give people like once or twice like a pass. So it's like, happens sometimes. But if it keeps repeating, I'm like, bro, that's a bit...
It's when a pattern develops.
Yeah.
And how do you kind of open up those conversations? Is it like unfortunately, is it blowing up in the moment? Or is it like hey, you go and talk to Grabbz and say, hey, Upset keeps stealing my pudding out of the fridge. It's annoying me,
I mean, a lot of times I wait for the debrief to say something that I think about, like if something is like wrong or whatever, or just after the scrim days. Basically, normally I don't want to do it in between scrims because people usually are very emotional in between that. So I feel like that's usually not the best time to talk about it. So usually I always try to save it for the end of the day, unless it's actually unplayable, unless we talk about it right now. But that's usually also where Upset comes in. Usually he's the one that like, calls people out if it's like between the games and they have the talk. So
The talk.
The talk.
Yeah. No. Feedback culture is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to learn. But how are you fitting in Fnatic? Like, I feel...
Fitting or feeling?
Fitting in with Fnatic. Because obviously, like, for a long time, they were your rivals and you were bullying them.
I guess.
You did spend a year, like 3 finals in a row, denying them a final.
No comment.
I mean,
we cut it here.
I mean, playing and talking to my top side, everything from last year makes a bit more sense now.
No, you did not.
Like today when we had this talk where everyone was just like, I don't know, I wasn't really thinking like much. I was like, I see. Because like last year when I was a GT, I thought we were pretty bad, but like, I guess, I mean, we also got away with the 0-3 into a victory in the finals. But no, I mean, overall, everyone is pretty chill. Like, I think a lot of our talks, or a lot of our, most of the debriefs and stuff go quite well. I think everyone outside of scrims is quite level-headed and can talk about like our difficulties like in a very respectful, normal manner.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the difficulty comes during the scrims where people are too attached to what happened in the game. Like the decision they made must be correct no matter what. So it's hard to have the talk in that moment. But I think afterwards everyone is a bit more detached, so it's very easier. So I think that's the part I like about this team, where usually we resolve most of our stuff if we have any issues like after. So that's nice. And yeah, everyone just like plays pretty well for the majority. I think the BDS was not a very good indicator, or the GT series. But then again, actually, the sickness part, like, I don't know how everyone gets sick so often. Like, I don't get it. I didn't get sick for like a year already. Like, I don't know how people do it.
To be fair, like the casting team has been wiped as well.
Yeah.
I just think there is something going on.
I haven't gotten sick yet.
I'm the same.
Touching wood,
Touchy,
right? And I just leave it to the fact that I'm a degenerate gamer that doesn't ever go outside or speak with anyone or has any really sort of social life. But I'm a little surprised by you,
because I'm the exact opposite.
You play Magic with the guys that all got sick.
Yeah, I don't know how I dodged it. Because I also then climbed with some of them who were also sick. So it's just like I've somehow managed to dodge all of them, which I've been. I don't really understand how. It's been insane.
I'm sitting next to Upset the whole time, and I'm living with Razork, and these guys are perma-sick, but I'm just immune. Maybe my immune system is like evolved.
To be fair, even as allergy,
but he also sick at the start of the year.
Fair. Actually, then you're right. Actually.
But yeah.
Well, we'll move along, lads. This is another kind of reoccurring segment that we have coming along called Goated or Bloated. So essentially, we're going to run through a couple of different picks or discussion points, and we're basically just going to say, do you think they're goated or do you think they're a bit overrated and they're bloated? So first one I want to get your take on is Mel bot lane. Because we've seen it a little bit. We've seen that you're able to kind of push in. You can get some decent plays on it, but I've been a bit underwhelmed with what we've seen on the Rift from it. I don't know about where your guys' takes are at.
I think it's goated.
Yeah?
Really? I think it's super, yeah. Because there's legit no AD carries that are actually good into it, I think. And I think the Mel as a champion just needs to set up like CC, so she can actually land her spells very easily and just like kind of win extended all-ins. Yeah, you can farm as well safely. And yeah, the reflection spell counters most supports. Yeah. There's like 2-3 supports that are pretty good into Mel, but like after that, it's hard to find champs that actually are good into it. Her. So yeah.
Why did you whisper it? No, I agree. I think especially in concept, every champ that is AP that can be flexed to bot as well should be really strong in the draft. Because as Mika said, right, that can catch you off guard. And there are not many good answers to it, so the champ should be more variable than the league thinks right now it is, or the world thinks. No one picks it besides us against, what was it, game 1 against G2?
G2,
yeah. Also,
mid, though. It was the wrong word.
Also, like during the game, yeah, it was mid, but during the game also Marek was like, the champ does no damage. And then we watched the game after the next day, we're like, no, we just boosted.
Yeah.
The champ is actually fine, which was bad. Like, okay,
yeah,
cool.
Like he reached its conclusion from like the very last fight where they had Mountain Soul and they had a Swain like running at him and Leona. Yeah. He was not damaged them. He was like, wow, my champ is useless. Yeah. And he was like 60k damage again. Yeah. So, like, what was that?
Yeah, but like, so this is why I kind of think it's bloated personally, because admittedly, my experience of Mel is very limited in what I've watched. But I feel like that it takes too long for her to build passive stacks, which is where like her execution works. And the way that her ult works is it also synergizes with her passive. So unless you have time to like harass with Q and E and like hit them, then I feel like that you don't, like your harassment and your poke is good. So if you play at range, I think she can be strong. But I do feel like in a meta that has become a lot more teamfight oriented, that's where I'm less convinced.
Also, I'm not convinced in a lane swap. I'm just like, because I've seen it where she just gets lane swapped on and you're like, you just don't push. You can push, but you don't take the tower particularly quickly. And then oftentimes you end up just losing out on the trade. I think that's where it kind of starts to struggle.
Well, good news for you. Riot Games has
that is
decided
true.
to
take it back, kick it, do everything to it.
Yeah, no bot lane every game.
Finally.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, the next one we're going to move on to is going to be Tryndamere mid. I'm not really sure. I think this was seen over in... No, actually, I don't know. I'm even going to pretend.
That's okay.
Sounds like Showmaker.
That's okay. Was it Showmaker? Yeah. Grand. What's your take on it? Is it just kind of a, hey, we got to game 5 and kind of needed an AD mid, or is it?
Wasn't it meta in the world for a while?
Yeah. 2 years ago, I think.
At some point.
I think also in the Croaky mid. Like, I think the same matchup he played as well. Might be wrong.
AP. I don't know.
I mean, I think Tryndamere as a champion is bloated in that regard, but I think, as we talked before, right, having a champion specifically that you know, like today, for example, Caps and Evia, right? These scenarios are really goated. So it's like, I think less a champion, more to be able to pick an AD like this and 4 or 5 is really good.
Yeah.
But the champ itself is whatever, I think.
Goated. I don't know. I just like, I think it pushes a lot of the lanes, at least from the matchups that people used to pick Tryndamere into. Because before it was just like, he would just push. You can't poke him out because of his Q and Dorn Shield, the second wind. And then he would just like hit your tower. Sometimes he would just like level 6, dive 1v1. Like, I don't know. It was completely crazy what I was watching when this champ was actually meta.
All I'm saying is if they ban it against us for 5, then I know.
Yeah. I think it's also, it's really interesting to see these discussions on different champions from different, like players who play different roles. Because I know for, like Odoamne was talking about the new Shogat that was the Halo Blade, Symbiotic Boots, and the Shreddy's Reverie. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, it's fine, but you can kind of manage it in lane. It's all okay. And then Jack Spectra, the AD carry main, was like, screw this champion. It's so dumb. I head it needs to be gone every game. And I think it's like, it's always interesting to me to hear these discussions because
100%.
immediately the mid laner could be like, oh yeah, this is bloated. I don't think it's that great. I'm able to manage it fine. And then it's the AD carry who's getting murdered by him, 11 minutes later that actually has a problem
also,
with it.
let's be honest, as I think as an AD carry, you just have to be a whiner to a degree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I've not met. I think Upset is actually very logical in this approach, so I appreciate that. But I think by default, AD carries are like always, you can't play, that's broken. Oh, it's so perfect. I don't like it.
As an aside, I feel like Upset and Mickey is a very witty and kind of, I'm going to say annoying bot lane to have to coach.
Yes.
I
think they can foundationalize.
I watched them do one analyst desk together where you guys were talking about, you made fun of Jack for a word that you used.
Yeah, foundationalize.
And you two just like dead
Immediately,
man. Immediately, just without hesitation.
But Elias is so good at it. Like he just like does it
He's
like
so
with
funny.
such a serious face. Like I can't do that personally. Like, I always start giggling.
And I can just imagine he's trying to have a very serious conversation, and then you and Elias just somehow like there's some argument between you and Marek, and he's just like, I really think Azir is good, and he's like, nah, man, I don't think Azir is going to work. And then somehow you in this bot lane being like, yeah, no, I agree with Marek. I think that this is a really bad, and you're just trolling. It can be either way. I just see them as massive trolls.
They are. Yeah, they are for sure.
Actually, I feel like we were like the instigators, and also like we back each other up when someone's like trolling someone. The other one will come in to help to like back up.
I knew it. Yeah.
I can't tell you how often like a scrim game happens where like Grabbz and me are both actually really angry about how they play, and I don't know how, but they both found the comment. It's like, don't fucking laugh. Don't laugh. I have to laugh. I can't laugh. And then it's fine. That's crazy.
At least the vibes are good.
It works. No, Upset is actually really funny. I think that's the biggest surprise for me because I mean I didn't have.
Yeah, if he ever retires, he can be a comedian for sure.
Yeah.
So goated then. He's goated.
He's got it.
Yeah.
It's humor. Yeah. Not safe for broadcast often. Either, but,
I just really want to get a hand on a mic check just to
no. Also, our own mic checking Fnatic is like, this has to go out, this can't be in, this has to go, this has to go.
So another one kind of in the same boat. We're going to go with Kled mid.
Bloated. I love that. I love the chant.
See, I'm the same as you because like I watched Doomy play it umpteen times in the LPL. I was like, this is sick, especially when Gourd Drinker was back. You go like Gourd Drinker, you get the shield off of Gargo, Stone Plate, and then you've got the extra life from Kled. And then by the time you get remounted, all those are just back up and available again. And it's just disgusting. But
Kled is amazing. I love the champion.
Yeah,
Goated.
same. I would probably think Goated too. I mean, last time Showmaker played, I think it didn't go so well for him, but I think he was also probably kind of first timing, low-key. But I think when we played it like 2023, I think, in G2, it was kind of OP. Like this champ would just like push mid, he would run bot, like it was so OP. He would just like go ult behind them and they can't do anything, just dive full HP.
It also has the best induction in the game with Talia. Remember?
Talia? Oh, yeah, Talia.
Because Kled will always survive no matter what.
Yeah.
Assassination. So if he ults and Talia ults, the path is closed. He will run around the entire map basically.
That's incredible.
Like in 2020 with one scrim, this happened to us. And Wanda, I think, was in the ult for actually like 40 seconds. Just finding the nearest path to the ult basically.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Just accidentally making it a 4v5 because he's disappeared to top lane.
That's a good try. Just like, see that maniac on his flank.
I love the idea that at some point in the last few weeks, this conversation has happened.
Yeah. Especially also with Mickey and the team, it's like, oh, I can pick this here. And you're just like upset, like, I think you should look at the owner. It's okay. Like, I really
He's kind of gatekeeping
it. He really is, yeah.
Speaking of, I think we already kind of heard you touch on it, but the other one that we have is Elise support. I feel like you're going to say goated immediately. I'm more interested in your opinion, Grabbz, because
I think it's got it. I think it's, I think it's really good.
But he says, because he sees my Elise. Like, it's not like, and on average, it's not really goated, but like, when I lock it in.
When does it make sense, Mickey?
Whenever you want.
Okay, so there was a game yesterday where we saw Azir, Ezreal, and then it was Elise.
He was I don't know, like, into the champs, he was just flash E, the can't touch. That's his thinking.
Because the thing is, with Elise, you just don't want to have like too much AP because you don't want enemy teams to have mercs. But other than that, as long as they can't buy mercs for fun and it's going to be good for them, I think Elise, just you pick it. There's like, in lane, you probably win lane against most matchups.
I was going to say, does it have any bad matchups?
I don't know, like maybe Rail. Like Rail is like kind of hard, but at the same time, it's whatever. I think Rakan maybe could be difficult in theory, but not really. Yeah, I don't know. I think you just kind of win.
The thing is, he's also very biased because as soon as you give Mickey a champ who can go electrocute, for example, like normally he doesn't talk as much, and then the rest is just perma giggling the entire game. I do so much damage. Look at me watching this guy. That's how scrims go. Then suddenly,
Didn't you build Storm Surge on your Elise game?
I did, yeah. Yeah, that's because like I thought I was kind of ahead, but then I actually wasn't that far ahead.
He built Banshees on Rel.
Oh yeah,
to block the pop.
that shit's okay though.
No.
Like
I was giggling this
I'm
entire
so far
time as
ahead.
well.
In the game.
It isn't on this list. It isn't on this list. Electrocute Alistair with Proto Belt. No.
That's too far.
That's the line.
That's the line I draw. Yeah. That just doesn't make any sense. Like if you're playing it mid lane, full AP, sure. Actually, I can win Proto Belt as well. Jesus Christ. That was messed up.
That was messed up.
Yeah. And the last goated or bloated that we have is, I think we have a tweet to support this, is the Zed jungle that Grabbz you were commenting on. If you would like to open up the conversation.
Bloated. Next topic. We actually gave him a chance in scrims to play it.
Yeah.
And bloated.
Looked extremely strong. Yeah.
Definitely bannable.
Yeah,
There's just no other better junglers in the game currently.
I think Koi, Casey, and G2 really should ban it in games 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, this is
That's
game
scary.
5 finals.
He's going to take over.
Yeah.
It's that
guys.
secret late game pocket pick.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure. Absolutely.
Well, we'll move on anyway. We also have
Especially like yesterday, he's like he's autopiloting. I don't want to see how
just walking into people on Zed.
Well, there's no idea. Oh, shut up, that.
So we thought we'd do another little trip down memory lane is what we have, or run it down memory lane, which is another segment that we have where we're going to take a look at an interview that you two guys did. So this is from summer 2019, week 2, day 1. And we're just going to play the clip. You'll actually see it up here.
I hate listening to myself. Please no.
And also, I think people have the misconception that you have to be like as mechanically talented as Caps to be in the LEC. It's perfectly fine for players like Dagda and Humanoid to be average. That's good in your rookie year, right? And it's more about playing as a team, I think, where the players do the mistakes. It's not their mechanics or their lane. It's just about not knowing where they should be. And now with more leagues and more academy teams, I think this is something where we will have the benefit of it in like 2-3 years if the coaching staff in these certain leagues and teams actually teach them something, or like do VOD reviews of like teams like us or RNG or SKT and tell, okay, how do they move? It's not that hard to teach. And I think that in 2-3 years, just the whole region will elevate.
Okay, Grabbz. So 5.5 years down the line, do you still agree with that sentiment that you don't need to be as mechanically skilled to enter the LEC, or do you think that bar is elevated as the... Well, also, do you agree maybe that the skill level has gone up?
It's really hard to compare timelines in that regard because, like, we talked.
Just the shake of the head from Mickey was impeccable.
What I mean was we talked about is that, like, just the general level from everybody has risen.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's hard to put it into this context right now. I still think on average, like, the teams are quite boosted when it comes to, like, what it should be, what I said in the clip.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't help with that, like, ELs didn't improve that one. But also, for example, the concept of, like, how much jungle support plays, especially jungle support, like, the things that, for example, FPX did in that year are now quite basic, I would say. But back then it was like, oh my god, the jungle support connect that much, it's impossible. Wow. So I think that's why it's so hard to compare the errors, right? But I think that's why, because the general knowledge has risen, mechanical skill is more important as well.
Mm-hmm. So do you think sorry, just trying to read into your comment, do you think the level of play has gotten so much higher that it is way more complicated to be like, hey, we can just watch a T1 game and understand exactly what they're doing? Because that was kind of the way you rounded out that clip was, hey, I can watch the LCK and LPL teams and say, this is what they are doing, we just copy. Do you think the complicatedness of this game has gone beyond that, where it's now like, hey, there's so much more that you have to try and keep track of throughout the game that it's just more difficult?
I wouldn't say the overall... Would you say complicatedness?
Yeah,
didn't
foundation
really...
lies and Look, sometimes I have to pull words out of nowhere and I just let them go.
I think I would say League is the hardest easy game that exists. Like, I still think overall, in theory, and that's why coaches are always like blabbering at the same stuff, it should be simple. of course, like if you're on the Rift, things can be complicated, and then it's about like the best teams just squeeze water over rock, right? It's about okay, what flashes do they have, what ult do they have, and then they forget sometimes the fundamentals. Like we still see people like Peanut invading alone and dying for no reason, and you would not say that the player's not good, right? He's one of the greats of the game, and that's because you try to like if both teams getting like if every team gets better and better, the more risk you have to take to actually be the team that is the standout team, right? So in that regard, I think it got harder that way, but League itself, I think we still do so many mistakes fundamentally, especially in Europe. Kind of crazy to see as well. And for me also, the regional leagues play a very distinctive style, which is very different than LEC. It's basically the overgrouping as 5, go to mid, and maybe you win this with an LFL. If you have only just go 5 mid, press the ult and you win. And this is something that with the conversations I heard in the past, maybe this time around it's different, but you can still in scrims that some people that have influence from ELs play that way. And then we just stay on side lane, farm it up, and then suddenly they're 1k behind after 2 minutes of this because they're not playing the map correctly in that way, right? And they have to learn it. And it's not like we invented it. It's we went to international tournaments, got slapped by Koreans, and then looked at them, okay, that's how they play the game. I think that still applies.
Yeah, I agree.
I yapped a bit, I'm sorry. Can I just say like how young you looked, Babyx?
Actually, the glasses were like,
The glasses
good
clean
thing it went away.
You're a man now.
Is there context here?
I
That we should
don't
know
know,
about? Is this your pet name for him? Is this your...
No, I think it just upsets it in that content piece, no? And that's one time. It's actually not a
Okay,
thing.
since he's trying to make it a thing, I will
Okay.
say why
Make it a thing.
why it happened.
Okay.
So, we were just playing duo queue and he was playing from home.
Yeah.
And he was talking to his wife and he said like, baby, something, something, something. I thought it'd be funny. I said, yeah, what's up? And it's from that moment he started calling me Babyx. I'm not talking to you. Yeah, that's the lore.
I see.
Guys, make it a thing, okay? On Twitter.
And so now
It's
it's
not a
he
thing,
really
I'm
likes it.
sorry, yeah. It's impossible for this not to be a thing.
because you do know now that the casters know about
Yes.
this, that if you make a play, it's that's my Babyx.
Just a graphic that pops up.
Jesus.
I can say now with security, you just ruined our playoff chances, by the way. Just going right down. Thank you. All the Fnatic fans, this guy today.
Now I can't make any good plays.
He will think of this. Like he will be like on the card on the flank and just like Babyx. He will not go for it.
We make
is
an
this a-
emote that is like a baby with Mickey's
No, we
face
can't.
on it.
No, we can't.
He'll find some sort of copyright law that won't let us do that. That's funny.
So then coming back into the conversation, do you feel like the hands diff essentially is made in the ERLs, and then it's about showing that you have the regular skill cap to enter into the LEC, and then once you get here, it actually is about just, hey, go get your ass beat at internationals for a while until you learn how you're supposed to play the game? Or do you think there is enough now of teams starting to pick up and look at other regions that they're starting to get those foundations down?
Go first. I yapped a bit right now, so your turn.
I mean, I think some people are just not very good at looking at players and judging how good they actually are. So then they kind of have to rely on other factors, either a good word from someone or statistics or something else. But I think if people actually knew what to look for and how to see if a player is actually good, like mechanically, and what they can, if they can do something better than even like the best players in the region, then that player is probably worth looking at and teaching how to play the game like normally, you know. Like if a player is like really insane at like some specific thing he does that no one else does, even Caps, for example, then probably something to look at, you know. But yeah, I think nowadays there's not really much of that, I would say. And most of the teams or most of the players that get picked up to the LEC, they usually just win EU Masters and then they go forward, which is like fair enough.
Rather than dunking on players, is there anyone in particular that you look at and you say, hey, like, I see something special in that player from an ERL, or is there anyone that you've just kind of played against in solo queue that you're like, oh, this player's sick?
No. EOS is looking a bit rough right now. It's dry.
I think the most up and coming would be like Trayson for top lane, I think. That's someone that I've Trayson.
Okay.
Of course not, but I think that's someone that could make the jump soon. At the same time, though, like I want to just shout out as well. I think it's kind of sad that Vladi is not eligible for Rookie to Split.
Well,
Is he?
well, so
It's on him.
I mean, I guess I can talk about it now. I'm responsible for the awards this year. And so like there are a bunch of changes which haven't been announced yet.
Oh, okay. Spoiler.
But I mean, like, so one of the things I am pushing for, which I will not promise, but one of the things I'm pushing for is that I don't think that it's fair that some players only play in summer, like one split, and then if they then leave, then like that basically they're not eligible to be a rookie. So the thing that needs to be worked out is the actual wording of it, but it's something along the lines of if you joined in summer of the previous year, you would still be eligible for rookie.
Yeah.
This rule, I'm pretty sure, would only apply to Vladdy, because I don't think anyone else really joined in summer. But I'm of the opinion that it's not super fair that some players get an entire year to prove that they're rookie of the year, in contrast to only a single split. But like wording needs to be finalized, and also like, but like, so right now it's just an idea. But I'm very much in alignment that I think that a player like Vladdy, who's shown a lot of promise, for him to be snuffed out just because he joined in summer of last year, and then now he's suddenly not a rookie anymore, I think is unfair. So I'm investigating, and I'm working towards trying to bring about that change. But again, like the wording on it has to be quite specific, because then like what happens if someone joins in winter, then they don't own a chain, and then they come back the next year? Like, are they then not a rookie? Like, that's the sort of thing I need to figure out. So.
It's fine. He won't win anyway.
Why is this? Explain.
But the one thing I have, like, because we're low on time. Why do we keep going backwards, Mickey? Because like from my perspective, I've cast the league now. Fun fact: this will be my 8th, 9th year casting LEC. I joined back in 2016. We actually joined the same split. But every time teams come back from international, I think the only time it changed was maybe 2019 when I felt G2 came back from international. The rest of the league did get better. But I feel like we come back from Worlds, a lot of our teams got smashed. I definitely think some players have improved since Worlds, but the league doesn't seem to get better. I feel like that we're always backtracking. We're always going backwards. And then it's the same conversation where like our goal is to get to internationals. We go, they scrim. You get a reality check in a sense of like what an actual top tier team is because you scrim against the first seeds. And then it's just rinse and repeat. So why can't we actually like get to a level, hold it, and then build on that? Why do we always keep coming backwards?
Probably because of rosters being different all the time. So when there's a new team, they probably have to relearn the game together. And yeah.
But why does that happen? You have a roster of world-class players or like world qualifying players.
It's played in different teams, so they have different ideas of how they actually want to play the game. So it's always different than if a team is together and the whole year they talk about specific ways to play the game or specific things, just like our champions. They will usually be on the same page of what is correct for them. But then when people join from different teams, their truth is different than someone else's truth.
Right.
So then it's a bit harder to get on the same page, and then you just have to go through the year and then find out together what is actually correct. What is your truth of the team? So yeah, I think that's why a lot of times it always starts a bit more on the slow end, and people need to get on the same page. Because I think just getting on the same page is the main thing that people need to do to get better. So yeah.
How much time do we have? I think, and I will talk for all the coaches now also, that I think, not sure how Korean China is, but players have an issue of remembering things we talked about, let's say 3-4 weeks ago. So if you're not constantly reminding them of even stuff like take the base after a play, after 2 weeks, we start doing it again. For example, for us right now in this team, after a break of like even 2-3 days, the first 2 scrim days are way worse already.
I see.
In team play. And even worse than, of course, if you have, like, let's say, a split break now. Like, if we don't go to first stand, I don't even want to imagine how the first 2-3 days are going to be like. Of course, they pick it up again faster than before. But if you have to constantly remind them of the building blocks that you had before, it's just hard to reach those heights. And also, I think it is really important also for the fans to understand. When we talk about skill compared to Asia, it's not the heights. Because I think on a good day, G2 last year, even Fnatic, they could have beaten those teams.
Right.
But the importance is like the frequency of having these good games. And that is understanding the fundamentals and playing accordingly, right? And then being on the same page, which probably in these countries might be easier because their age is the thing that gives you authority by default in the culture, right? So if the coach or the oldest player says we do it this way, he would put a discussion like, no, I think this way. There, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like
Right,
you actually
right.
just listen because you're the younger person in the room. So in that regard, I think that also what allows them, if then the oldest person is smart about the game, he doesn't have to be a genius, but at least smart enough to then build the foundations and shortcut in the game, the frequency is just higher. And that's why, like in the best of 5 or something, it feels like we're so close, but that they're just more likely to have a good game than we are. It's not about the highest of highs. I don't think, of course, there are certain players like Bin or Rula who are better mechanically as well.
Yeah, sure.
But I think on average, if you look at top teams, it's not like you look at them and you feel like, oh, I can't play against them. Without saying names, there were players last year at Worlds in Asia where you're like, they are so much worse than me. Yeah. And I think that's fair. But again, it's as a team to have the frequency of good games. That's the thing we want to work on. But it's also very ungratifying as a player.
Right.
Because that's a learning process. And especially, and I said to you guys, you know this much, but Generation TikTok. Like actually in the twin scrims, I just look around and I see like TikTok, Instagram reels, and just instantly something new. It has to feel good,
Right.
Learning doesn't feel great. You get the gratification after 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And some people just don't like this process. And then you have to be extra careful as a coach to like keep them on the path, basically.
That's super interesting, yeah. Especially the different perspectives. Like, I mean, it is the same perspective. Like, it's not that you disagree or anything, but hearing it from the responsibilities angle is really interesting.
Very quick hit on it, just because of your comment there. What do you think of the level of like supports in Europe versus LPL or LCK? Do you think it's actually that big of a difference, or is it?
I'm not too sure. I didn't think last year, at least, there was like a big difference. I mean, I think Keria was kind of like the GOAT at the end of the tournament. I think like at the start, I don't think he was like insane or anything. I think Delight was probably the best, like group stage wise, and then afterwards Keria was kind of insane. But I didn't think like anyone was like above everyone else. Like people were hyping up On throughout his whole year, and then he was just fine. You know, he was playing good, but nothing insane.
What do you think is the difference maker? Is it like they can see an angle that we don't, or is it how they run around the map, how they can interact with people?
I think for me at least, the important part is knowing when to be where, I guess. Yeah, just where to be on the map, and then knowing how you should play your lanes, because that's kind of what, when I was watching the final of LPL last year, I was like, wow, these guys don't know how these matchups are supposed to go. And then, just how they play fights or how they engage. I think that's kind of what I judge people from. And if I would have to say for this year's support in EU, I mean, I think it's fine, but at the same time, I would just have to judge it when they actually face each other off in international tournaments to see. But I think support is probably the hardest role to actually judge, like player versus player, how good someone is. I think a lot of it's like team.
All right. Well, we're just coming up to the end, so I'm going to move on to community questions. So this one comes from Ossify or Ossifi, the unknown Ossifi. Do you think Fearless will make LCK and LPL stronger or weaker?
Speaking of frequency of good performance, I think ultimately it will make them a bit weaker because they were really good at if you played their game, they knew it better normally. So it is easy to drag them down to your level, basically.
Hell yeah.
So I don't really think that will benefit them. I think it's better for Western teams. Unless, of course, for example, let's say right now Jax is like borderline meta, like he's being played. Imagine we move away from it, but then Bin has a game 5 Jax. You're like, oh, okay, there are certain players or certain champions that might be drafted a bit harder, but I think on average it should be better for us.
Cool.
I kind of agree with that. Yeah, I think we had a lot of discussions last year where the Asian teams had different metas. So, like for example, we didn't play much Lucianami in Europe, but in Asia it was like played a lot of like Aphelios lanes or Jinx lanes. And then when we go to internationals, usually the Asian teams are the ones that kind of dictate what the meta is. Like, I guess the only thing we brought to like international was like Kalista at some point in 2023. Then other people started playing it, but otherwise it's mostly just like what the Asian teams play, like Lucianami, Aphelios, like Senna, Nautilus I think was also during last year. And then if you don't practice on this for like your split, it's a bit harder to start picking it up at international tournaments. So for example, during last year's MSI, we didn't really play Lushanami. We didn't really play like Senna lanes, so we had to just ban it for most of our games, I think. So yeah, in Fearless it's a bit easier because they pick it one game, sure, fair enough, you have a strat ready, and then they can't do it again, and you save up some bans, and then I feel like it's a lot easier in that regard.
But as far as I know, MSI and Worlds is still normal.
We don't
Last
even know
stand,
yet
though.
if it's spring or summer. That's when we Fearless, right? I think there's nothing else.
I mean, I hope it's still Fearless. I love Fearless.
I mean,
it's so much fun.
I've become a very big fan of Fearless, yes, but I can't make comments because I genuinely don't know. But as far as I understood, it was only the first tournament of the year was Fearless. And
Last stand is ours.
I mean, but you're completely, I very much, our most successful year was when we were dictating the meta. And that was your 2019 year, right? With all the Pyke multi-flexing and the Lysandras coming out of nowhere as an answer to LeBlanc.
But even that was not really us dictating because it didn't copy us. We just did something else, no?
Yeah.
I think that was more like
That's
us playing IP bot laners and stuff. And that's the same thing like FlyQuest last year in Genji. Immediately, Genji was like half asleep. That's how it felt like when watching them play. But still, they picked their own champs and played their game. And it's always visible for especially Korean teams if they have a matchup they don't know. Like the performance really drops.
I don't know what Nuno does, yeah. His E roots afterwards.
Yes.
All right. Just next question then is from Caspero Sander. I feel like some of Babyx's plays have been really mind-bogglingly good. Love to see his Rakan specifically. What would you say are your favorite 5 supports if the meta was not in the question? And if you don't want to answer that or you're giving too much away.
Wait, that was for me?
Yeah.
It was from Upset.
So the top 5 supports?
Yes. If the meta isn't the question, just what's your favorite to play?
Oh, my favorite to play? TF is my favorite.
Every single.
Bard. What else do I like to play? Gragas. And Elise.
I mean, 4 of those are meta.
Yeah.
It's a shame Pyke doesn't work, though.
I mean, yeah.
What a shame.
I mean, Bard is a bit out of meta right now, but I think I can probably bring it back. The other 4, though, I think I have to just pull them off.
I mean, you also have that pick that won twice that we can't mention.
true, yeah.
But yeah, 'cause
That's
that
intent
was
for a
actually
reason.
the follow-up question from Floriani 1660 was Duffman tweeted BB finally showed a special pick in Warwick and said now it's time for Mickey to show his special pick. So is that kind of what you're referring to?
Who knows?
Don't know.
I guess I have to find out. In the 3
Tune
best of
in
5.
this Friday.
I hope we don't find out.
That's sorry, I'm trying to go through ones that aren't incredibly long. So in your opinion, so this is from Jose Pinto 1561. In your opinion, what are the major factors preventing Fnatic from being considered the clear best team in Europe right now?
BDS game.
Sickness. That's one.
And consistency.
Drafts. Number 2.
I am not the draft anymore.
That's what I would say as well if I was doing it.
No, of course, I have input. No, I think actually consistency. I think Elias, Upset, and Razok are kind of consistent in communication. And with top mid support, it depends on the day, how you feel like.
Yeah.
And that already makes it hard to be consistent, right? Because as we said, like Upset is not feeling the greatest, still a bit sick. And then if he's sick, and then Russell decides that today is an autopilot day, it can be really hard, right? And especially then, and this is again the gratification part, especially as like they're world-class players. If I tell them for the 5th time a day how to set up the Drake very basically, they're going to be, shut up, please, like we know, right? But they don't do it all the time. So it's like, where's the balance between reminding you of the base? Well, I have to ask you because yesterday in game 1, like we had the control, and you just set as Rakan to be like, oh, there might be not in the bush. I got hooked on that. Oh, cool.
No, you didn't teach me.
Okay, my bad.
I was watching your Poppy. You were at the Arakan and you're zoning at their blue buff. And it turns into you a 4v5 because Aurora was nowhere near, and then all of a sudden it turned into a 4v4 because you got zoned off of their blue.
I'm zoning Pantheon.
But I was. And Ezreal was on me as well.
And then Panth ignored you and ulted anyway.
Yeah, because Ezreal was zoning me from cancelling the Pantheon. So my team was legit 3v5, 3v4. But also that other we could have finished if we hit it from the start.
Yeah, no, that's actually true. Yeah, that was dead if we decided that.
And Mel was 5 seconds of cooldown, so that was a bit annoying.
The last question I was going to ask you was from Atnazar Kaderi, which is what went wrong with the team and are these issues now resolved? I don't feel like from your last 2 answers that they've been resolved at all.
We're in the process of...
We're in a long process of doing that.
But yeah, I think... Yeah, it's kind of the same thing as I was saying throughout the split. I think comms are kind of a thing that we need to work on still throughout. Yeah, we've been working throughout the entire winter split and still like pops up a lot of times because I feel like on stage, everyone gets a lot more stressed, becomes a lot more panicky. We're like, can I do that? I don't know. Someone check. And then we just like run in and die. And like, yeah, they were nothing, guys.
Yeah. I mean, it is true that Mickey's saying that in this team, it is a good thing that everybody wants to talk. It's a bad thing that everybody likes their own voice that much as well. It feels like sometimes. That even we watch our games against G2, I think, and I want to say something, and I start my sentence, and I was like, no. I'm like,
no.
I didn't even make my point yet, brother. Like, what do I want to say? I feel just say this. No, can I just finish my point, right? And this is like in game, out of game, and just Mickey.
Implement the talking stick.
Yeah, Mickey wants a talking stick that we just actually give someone a pillow or something.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to talk now.
Yeah.
Like in preschool, maybe that helps. Not sure in game that will then be.
But also we were in comms for the Judo game, and there was a period of time for 5 seconds, 3 people were talking at the same time. I could not rewatching. I could not hear what was being said. What is going on?
Damn.
And Razak was like, asked a question and then insta went to the next sentence. Like, what time do they use? Oh, I'm going for that again. Like, I don't have time to answer.
I really appreciate your guys' honesty. And we thank you so much for coming in on your off day as well. Because this was really insightful. I really appreciate it. I always love speaking to you both. You got a lot of experience.
Thanks for having us.
And it's honestly super, super insightful. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on, lads. That is going to be everything for episode 4 of EUphoria. Thank you once again for joining us, and we'll catch you all later. Bye-bye.